Now, the Seaboard and Roanoke Railroad is, a really old railway. They were organized in 1833 as the Portsmouth and Roanoke Railroad. They were never the largest rail line in the world, but in the 1880s they became part of the Seaboard Airline Railway system, which extended all the way down to Florida, and then they merged in 1967 with the Atlantic Coast Line to become the Seaboard Coast Line, and then in the 80s they merged again with the Chessie system to form CSX. Aha! There's a name we finally know. CSX is one of the big names in freight transportation in America, and if you live here, you've probably seen an engine or two by them if you're a train spotter. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about the train that's underwater. Engine number 2. That's the shortest number I've ever had to talk about when it comes to one of these engines. How did this train wind up underwater? Well, I take you to what is now present-day Kerr Lake. Haha, Kerr Lake. Yeah, I'm glad I know that's how you pronounce it. See, UK, you guys get mad about me mispronouncing stuff, but don't worry, we spell things really stupid over here, too, and pronounce it way differently from the way it looks. It's not just you, alright? I don't know what happened to the English language. I am a published author, and I write in English, and I still don't understand why we do this stuff, but it doesn't matter. Now, Kerr Lake isn't actually a lake, but it's a reservoir. It's impounded by the John H. Kerr Dam. Oh, that's where the car comes from. It's all your fault, John. That was constructed between 1947 and 1952. And while there is a current railroad bridge over Kerr Lake, that is not the bridge that we're dealing with. Back in 1918, when the crash actually occurred, there wasn't a lake there. There was, in fact, just a few isolated creeks. And over one of the larger creeks was a big old trestle bridge. In March of that year, there had been a forest fire that scorched the bridge, but they deemed it safe because safety standards back then were basically non-existent, as I keep mentioning. Although, you're gonna love this though, allegedly, they did test the bridge at least one time with the tried-and-true scientific method of, and I promise you this is what my source says they actually did. They actually sent a locomotive over the bridge, unmanned. The driver and fireman started it, then jumped off, let the engine run over the bridge, and then a different driver and fireman on the other side climbed back on and then stopped it. There's nothing scientific about this. But after that, apparently they deemed it safe because it looked fine. It's just a little fire. What could possibly go wrong? It's fine. Don't worry about it. Yes, it has a bunch of scorch marks on it, but that's just superficial. What? The trestle's made of wood and that... Shh. It'll be fine. Engine number 2 was going over the bridge on March 27th, 1918. On board were actually 2 brothers, Ben the engineer and Burton the fireman. The bridge, was not safe, as you may have predicted, and a section collapsed, taking the engine as well as the rest of the train and the 2 brothers down into the creek. Sadly, they did not survive. An effort was made to get the engine out, but allegedly it was buried in the mud, and they didn't have the means to actually extract it, so it was left for all that time. And then they put Kerr Lake over it. And it was still there. And even now, as I speak, it is still there. In fact, apparently there was a time when it was normal for swimmers, because Kerr Lake is very popular for leisure activities, to dive down into the lake and ring the engine's bell, which is still attached. This might just be an urban legend, but some of the sources say this is a thing that actually occurred. And even though it's underneath a lake, apparently the engine is only 50 feet down. And allegedly, a bunch of divers did some investigation and found the remains of the engine along with one of the cars. But you may notice so far that I've been remarkably vague in terms of what exactly the engine is. And, okay, first of all, one of the sources I found was actually a local news report from 2010. And I'll be real with you, it kind of is a great example of why I can't trust anybody anymore. Because I swear to you, I knew less about this engine after viewing the news report on it. And I don't even know how you do that. I feel like part of my brain was like sapped of energy from viewing this thing because it was so vague and sensationalist and just like, oh, there's a train. It didn't give me any good information. But the thing that really made me mad about it was that they presented 2 pictures of the engine in question, engine number 2. Now, I'm going to happily display both these pictures, and I want you guys to give a cursory examination and tell me what's wrong. Do you see it yet? Do you see why I was so irritated? Because again, the news report said that these were both the same locomotive. But if you actually look at them, hey, those are two different wheel layouts. This one has 6 driving wheels. It's a 10-wheeler. This one only has 4. It's an American. So what the heck is the deal here? Either the news report was just plain frickin' wrong, which is possible. I mean, they could have easily missed this because they clearly didn't take the time to do a proper report and give people any actual information, because that would have been helpful. Or, and they could have mentioned this, and I want to stress I have found no source that actually confirmed this, but it does make some logical sense based off of my educated guessing here, but it is just that, guessing. It could actually be the same locomotive, and it was rebuilt into a 10-wheeler. By 1918, Americans were on the way out, and 10-wheelers were the mainstay with a lot of railways. So it's not unreasonable to suggest that an older model American locomotive, instead of being scrapped, was simply rebuilt into a 10-wheeler. That, again, is pure conjecture, and I have literally no basis for saying so beyond just assuming the best here, in that these pictures do have technically the same locomotive in them, but, you know, all I'm saying is trust no one. And try to get information from, like, viable sources, like your own reading and actual educated books written by historians that actually know what they're talking about, and not some sensationalist news media nonsense that did nothing but make me feel dumber for having viewed it. Ugh. Anyway, so the engine's still there, apparently. Should it be raised, is the question. Regardless of which picture is of the actual engine, or if it's both, whatever, it doesn't really matter in this case, they both have wooden cabs. So the cab is, gone. It's absolutely, without question, not there anymore. The actual metal components probably are. There's a couple issues here. It was buried in the mud, so it probably took forward damage. And this particular locomotive, whether it's American or a 10-wheeler, is not a locomotive that has not seen preservation. Many heritage railways have either or, possibly both. But it is also only in freshwater, so it might have held up pretty well, so who knows, it might be a nice display piece for a museum or something. I mean, if someone actually wants to do it. It is only 50 feet down, apparently. If you can get it out of the mud, I mean, it might be worth it, but you'd have to fund that expedition. And, you know, 50 feet down is still 50 feet down. It'd still be a pain in the butt. And no, even if they get it out, it probably won't run again. Okay, this is something we keep going over. Generally speaking, an engine that has been waterlogged for 100 years will not be able to operate safely under steam pressure anymore without extensive rebuild work. So, yeah. Just so we're clear on that. I know I keep having to say that, but having said it repeatedly, I still get sometimes people say that say no, but there was this one time where this, look, it's possible, sure, but the problem is I have to give you guys realistic expectations on this kind of stuff. And the notion that someone would go through the financial burden of bringing this locomotive up, and then go through the additional financial burden of refurbishing it extensively to the point that I would say would almost be a complete rebuild of the whole thing is very, very, very unlikely. That's all I'm trying to say here. Right now the engine's still under the lake, and it will probably stay there. But you know what really makes me mad? The divers that apparently went down and, found it, there's no pictures of this. Not one. Not a single one took pictures of the locomotive under the water, and they said they found it. But, guys, pics or it didn't happen. I have to deliver good information to my viewers. I try to give the best facts I am able to at any given time. I make occasional errors, I know this, but I do my best here. And when you guys can't even give me pictures of the train you allegedly found underwater, what does that even mean? What does it even say about you? You know? You guys are killing me. Please, somebody, it's 50 feet down. Get a waterproof cell phone. I don't care. I just want to see what it looks like. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.